Introduction. Based on the presentation from our group, which has been studied to prepare the tourists from Malaysia to Maldives graph, we evaluate the data every month starting from 2015 to 2022 to find out the fluctuation figures every month in more detail according to the year to learn how many tourists come from Malaysia who go to Maldives. Here we also provide data features, comparison and conclusion for each year.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nazlana Joy binti Muhammad Haizal. The metric number is 70 DHF20F2034. So, today I want to present about statistics theories from Malaysia to Maldives. This is a line graph, which is the diagram 1 2050. So, this graph above shows tourists from Malaysia to Maldives from 2050 and 2022. So there is a survey of Malaysian visitors. The survey participation rate among tourists peaked in December at 1.51%. The busiest month for Malaysian tourists to the Maldives are May and December. So the least popular month for tourists to visit in 2050 is February, which is 0.58%. So the comparison, February is lower than other months, which is 0.50%. May is slightly lower than December, which is May 1.41% and December is 1.51%. So the month of December is higher than other months, which is 1.50%. So the conclusion, this graph demonstrates the increase in the Malaysia visitor to the Maldives in 2050. Next. So this is a bar graph about the diagram 2016. So the features, there is a survey of Malaysia visitor. The surveys are participation rate among tourists peaked in December at 2.66%. The busy months for Malaysian tourists to the Maldives are May and December. So the less popular month for the tourism in the 2016 is January, which is 0.65%. So the comparison, January is lower than February, which is January 0.65% compared to the February 0.96%. So May is the middle between November and December. So December is higher than other amounts. So the conclusion, this graph demonstrates insecure in the Malaysia visitor to the Maldives in 2016. So that's all from me, and thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Next, I am presenter number 2. My name is Balkis Ra'alia binti Muhammad Zawawi. My metric number 17 DHF20F2038. Okay, here is a bar graph for data analysis in 2017 for each month. The bar graph has shown the amount of increase and decrease for each different month for tourists from Malaysia to Maldives. Next, data analysis for title is the graph above shown tourists from Malaysia to Maldives in 2017. A survey was conducted among tourists in Malaysia. For futures, first point, it is clear that the highest month visited by Malaysian tourists in the Maldives is December, and February is the least popular month of tourists visited in 2017, and the highest number of tourists involved in the survey was in December at 2.323%. Next, comparison. First point, the number of Malaysian tourists visited the Maldives in December is then higher than in February. Second, for tourists in Malaysia to the Maldives in February is much lower than in January. Third point is the number of tourists in Malaysia to the Maldives in May is slightly lower than in December. Last but not least, for conclusion, it can be concluded that the months with the highest number of tourists in Malaysia is December, and the month of February is the least visited by tourists in 2017. Next is for the pie chart data analysis in 2018. The pie chart has shown the amount of increase and decrease for each different month for tourists from Malaysia to Maldives. Next, data analysis for title is this. The chart above shows the tourists from Malaysia to Maldives in 2018. The survey aims to interrogate the more than and less than percentage factors that contribute to Malaysia tourists in 2018. For features, first point, Malaysian tourists to the Maldives in January, February and October have a decrease in June slightly more than those months, and it can be seen that the frequency of Malaysian tourists to the Maldives from January to February more than and less than from March to April. Next, comparison. First point, from January, there were 5% of Malaysian tourists and slightly more than to 14% tourists in June. Second is from April to June, the number of Malaysian tourists visiting the Maldives increased significantly from 10% to 14% and dropped below to only 6% in October. And third point is from June to August has almost from 14% to 7%. Last but not least, in conclusion, June is the reason for the significantly over percentage of tourists going out to Maldives, and January is the below percentage of Malaysian tourists going to Maldives in 2018. Last but not least, in conclusion, from 2015 to 2019, Malaysian tourists in Maldives was increased drastically and went down dramatically in 2020 due to COVID-19. After the COVID-19 pandemic that it has subsided, Malaysian tourists in Maldives increased slightly in 2021 to 2022.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurul Izzah binti Muhammad Nasir. My matrix number is 17DHF20F2061. This bar graph shows values tourists from Malaysia to Maldives from January to December in 2019. It can be clearly seen that there were 1.48 thousand Malaysian tourists in Maldives on January, 1.57 thousand tourists on February, 2.35 thousand tourists in March, and 2.41 thousand tourists in April. It can be clearly seen that the most popular month visited by Malaysian tourists in Maldives was April, and May were the least popular month for tourists visited in 2019. The number of Malaysian tourists in Maldives in January were marginally lower than February. Based on this graph, the numbers of Malaysian tourists who visited Maldives on April was subsequently higher than May. Next, Malaysian tourists in Maldives in November was much lower than December. It can be clearly seen that the most popular month visited by Malaysian tourists in Maldives was April, and May were the least popular month for tourists visited in 2019. This line graph shows values Malaysian tourists in Maldives 2020 from January to December. It can be seen that the frequency of Malaysian tourists in Maldives from January to February was increased slightly and collapsed drastically from March to April. From April to August were flattened out to December. it can be clearly seen that there were 910 Malaysian tourists in Maldives on January. In conclusion, from January to February was increased considerably and collapsed drastically from March to April.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Siti Mansur binti Azmi. My metric number is 7020F2008. Next, I want to explain about statistic tourists from Malaysia to Maldives in 2021 to 2022. First, I start to explain about data analysis tourists from Malaysia to Maldives in 2021. The graph above shows tourists from Malaysia to Maldives in 2021. Futures, first it can be seen in the 2021 data that the number of Malaysian tourists entering the Maldives in January increased slowly to July and less than in October. The highest month of Malaysian tourists entering the Maldives is in December. For comparison, the number of Malaysian tourists entering to Maldives in January more than February and less in March. Second, the analysis data of tourists entering in July and September is the same. The last one in December continued to higher compared to November. For conclusion, in 2021, total value data tourists from Malaysia to Maldives for month 2021 have an increase. Next, the graph above shows tourists from Malaysia to Maldives in 2022. For futures, first in January the data less than in November and more than in the month of December. Second, the number of Malaysian tourists entering the Maldives in February and March is the same as in June and July. For comparison, the first in January tourists from Malaysia to the Maldives less than but higher in April. Second, the number of Malaysian tourists entering the Maldives in November is less than in September or October. And the last one in January, tourists from Malaysia to Maldives has more than the month of September. For conclusion, total value data tourists from Malaysia to Maldives for months 2022 has a gradual increase.
Last but not least, in conclusion, from 2015 to 2019, Malaysian tourists in Maldives was increased drastically and went down dramatically in 2020 due to COVID-19. After the COVID-19 pandemic that it has subsided, Malaysian tourists in Maldives increased slightly in 2021 to 2022.